My whole body was burning up, so I awkwardly pulled open my collar. The scene before me left me momentarily stunned. I had actually been reborn back to the night I was drugged. Gu Yanqing's brother-in-law would burst in within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. I had to escape. Gu Qinghe had surely stationed guards here to ensure I couldn't slip away and ruin her plans. I had no time to think. I hurled the oil lamp at the bed canopy. Soon, the room was engulfed in flames. In this life, there was no way I would become the Yongnan Marquis' secondary wife, caring for the 2 children Gu Qinghe had born. Main text. Why is there a fire? What are we to do? Hearing the woman's voice, a cold smile curled at the corners of my lips. Chun Tao. Gu Qinghe's personal maid. Sure enough, Gu Qinghe had orchestrated all of this. You two stay here. I'll be right back. Chun Tao hesitated for a moment before speaking quickly. She didn't dare rush in to put out the fire. According to the plan, the Marquis was on his way. My breathing was labored. The heat within me, combined with the scorching temperature in the room, made me break out in a cold sweat. I waited a moment before trying to pull open the door. The door wouldn't budge. Did the Marquis of Yongnan know about Gu Qinghe's plan? I was born into a family of imperial merchants whose wealth rivaled that of a nation, with so many noble families vying for my hand. How could I have ever set my sights on the Marquis of Yongnan, who was 12 years my senior, in my past life? Gu Qinghe led a group to catch me in the act of adultery. She coughed up blood, wept, and berated me as a lewd and shameless woman. Gu Yanqing immediately announced the annulment of our engagement. I was reviled by everyone. The world said I was fit only to be the Marquis of Yongnan's concubine, but I refused to be a concubine. I wanted to shave my head and become a nun. Gu Yanqing stopped me. He said our paths were not meant to cross, that his sister was dying, and begged me to care for Gu Qinghe's 2 children. He promised to ask the Marquis of Yongnan to allow me to be his cowwife. I hesitated. My mother couldn't bear to part with me and pleaded with me until I finally agreed to become a cowwife. Thinking of this, I bit down hard on my lower lip until I tasted blood. In this life, I would never let Gu Qinghe manipulate me again. I violently overturned the tables and chairs in the room, then staggered over to the window. Miss Chu, please don't fall. But what if someone gets killed? A slightly awkward voice said. Don't panic. I'll open the door and take a look, the older maid whispered, unlocking the door. As she pushed the door open, I flung the window open and scrambled out with all my might. Miss Chu, Miss Chu. The 2 searched the area but saw no sign of me, and instantly panicked. I had closed the window behind me as I climbed out. Miss Chu, she hasn't been burned to death, has she? Impossible. Let's go after her. She can't have gone far. Indeed, I hadn't gone far. I had run into Cui Yongzhang's courtyard. Cui Yongzhang was the 2nd younger brother of the Marquis of Yongnan. In my previous life, he had helped me on numerous occasions. I trusted his character. He would never take advantage of someone in distress. Who's there? A crisp, icy voice rang out, and a sword glinting with cold steel was pressed against my neck. 2nd young master, save me. My mind was muddled, my eyes blurry, and I lunged toward the man in the moonwhite robe. Clang! Cui Yongzhang's sword fell to the ground, and he instinctively pushed me away. I fell to the ground, letting out a muffled groan of pain. Miss Chu, what are you doing here? Cui Yongzhang asked in confusion, reaching out to help me up before pulling his hand back. I've been drugged. 2nd young master. Please don't make a scene. My face flushed crimson, my body felt weak and feverish, and my voice grew faint. Well, I'll go find your maidservant. No, I don't trust her. I only trust you. I hurriedly replied. Qiuwing, she had taken me to that room and then fled. In my past life, Qiuwing became Gu Yanqing's concubine. Therefore, I trusted neither Qiuwing nor Gu Yanqing. Under the lamplight, Cui Yongzhang's eyes flickered with a sudden gleam. Since Miss Chu trusts me, Please take this pill. Chui Yongzheng took a small white porcelain bottle from his sleeve and poured out a white pill. I immediately took the pill from his hand and swallowed it. Chui Yongzheng paused for a moment, then smiled gently. It seemed I truly did trust him. The cool pill settled in my stomach, gradually dispelling the burning heat in my body. I took a deep breath and steadied my mind. Thank you, second young master. I bowed and pulled out every silver note I had on me, handing them to Chui Yongzheng. It was nothing. No need to be so formal. Chui Yongzheng quickly waved his hand in refusal. Our hands brushed briefly. Chui Yongzheng's handsome face flushed, and he hastily withdrew his hand. Second young master, you saved my life. You must accept these silver notes. I pressed the notes into Chui Yongzheng's arms and turned to leave. The Yong'an Marquis mansion had long since become an empty shell. Otherwise, Gu Qinghe wouldn't have set her sights on me. Now, I only wanted to know what role Gu Yanqing had played in all this. Well, then I'd be rude to refuse. Chui Yongzheng watched my retreating figure and murmured softly. I let the corners of my mouth turn up slightly as I walked out of Chui Yongzheng's courtyard. Chui Yongzheng lived in a secluded, deep part of the estate with no attendants. He was not well regarded within the Marquis' household. In my previous life, a few days later, he went to enlist at the border. 3 years later, Chui Yongzheng became General Mingwei. So, he was in desperate need of money right now. I looked at the house before me, billowing with black smoke and nearly reduced to ashes, and the corners of my mouth turned up slightly. The Marquis of Yong'an stood with his back to me, his voice steady and firm. She couldn't have been burned to death. Search every room, you must find her. I paused in surprise. He showed no signs of intoxication. In my previous life, the Marquis of Yong'an claimed he was drunk and mistook me for his concubine. It seems now that he was lying. Yes, Your Grace. The servant hurried away in a panic. I remained hidden in the shadows, with no intention of revealing myself. Your Grace, Chu Yujin has disappeared. What are we to do now? Gu Qinghe covered her mouth with a handkerchief and began to cough. She's been drugged. She can't have gone far. Alone. She can't escape our grasp. The Marquis of Yong'an turned around. In the lamplight, his eyes and brows betrayed a ruthless glint. I'm afraid someone else might take advantage of her. Wouldn't all our efforts have been for nothing then? Gu Qinghe glanced at the handkerchief and quickly handed it to Chun Tao. She had coughed up blood again. The imperial physician said she had only 2 months left to live. Where is Yanqing? Have him go find Chu Yujin. Yanqing is in my courtyard with Qiuing. Chun Tao, go fetch them. Hearing Gu Qinghe say this, the Marquis of Yong'an shot her a cold glance. The matter isn't settled yet. Tell those two to be careful, they shouldn't be loitering in your courtyard at the drop of a hat. My ears rang instantly, and I felt a bit dizzy. So, at this very moment, Gu Yanqing had already started seeing Qiuing. In my previous life, Gu Yanqing pretended to be madly in love with me and took a considerable amount of silver from me. But now that I was the wife of the Marquis of Yong'an, I simply couldn't openly give silver to Gu Yanqing. So Qiuing came up with a plan for me. She had me adopt her as my adopted sister and betroth her to Gu Yanqing as a concubine. That way, I could use the silver as Qiuying's dowry and send it to Gu Yanqing under the guise of a legitimate transaction. Tears blurred my vision. The fiancé had always trusted implicitly was actually helping someone else harm me. I wiped my tears with a handkerchief. In my previous life, Gu Yanqing married Lu Rian, the concubine-born daughter of the Minister of Rights. Was he truly forced into it? I dared not dwell on the thought. Now is the critical moment to use Qiuing, so Yanqing naturally has to placate her, Gu Qinghe said in a low voice, glancing at several ladies approaching from a short distance away. Those were guests she had specially invited. Now that the main character was gone, what was there left to see? Look at the mess you've made. The Marquis of Yong'an flung his sleeve in displeasure and strode away. Gu Qinghe pouted in aggrieved silence, tears welling in her eyes. If it weren't for her 2 children, She wouldn't have gone to all this trouble for the Marquis of Yongnan. Oh my. Is there a fire here? The minister's wife had a loud voice and asked the question before she even got close. Well, Eugene had just come here to rest, and somehow a fire broke out. Gu Qinghe bit her lip and spoke weakly. Eugene actually set a fire in the Marquis's mansion. She's far too brazen. Lady Zhang shouted at the top of her lungs, her eyes brimming with gossip. Gu Qinghe fell silent. I saw it coming. Chu Yujin, being the daughter of a merchant, is the most restless of them all. Lady Marquis, should we report this to the authorities? Where has Chu Yujin run off to? She has absolutely no manners. My lady, Master Gu is a third-place scholar in the imperial examinations. How could he possibly have a fiancé like Chu Yujin? Exactly. Chu Yujin isn't a match for Master Gu. The ladies chattered away in a flurry of voices. A faint smile tugged at Gu Qinghe's lips. The ladies she had invited were all gossips. She was certain that by tomorrow morning, her reputation would be ruined. By then, all she'd need to do was employ a little trick, and she'd succeed. Ladies, why are you all so worked up? Where is your decorum, your manners, your dignity? I stepped slowly out of the shadows and spoke in a cold tone. Everyone froze, staring at me in disbelief. Yujin, where have you been? Don't be afraid. I won't report this to the authorities. Gu Qinghe suppressed her doubts, forced a smile, and said, at such a young age, and yet your words are so vile. Chu Yujin, you set fire to the Marquis's residence. If the Marquis's household decides to press charges, you'll end up in prison. I never would have guessed you'd be so brazen. You truly live up to your reputation as a merchant's daughter. The minister's wife and Lady Zhang spoke one after the other. I narrowed my eyes at the two of them. Did you see me start the fire? The two women choked on their words, then turned to look at Gu Qinghe. Gu Qinghe's expression froze, and she forced a smile. Yujin, it doesn't matter if you started the fire. The Marquis's mansion won't hold it against you. Lady Marquis. I was only in this room for 15 minutes before I left. At that time, the room wasn't on fire. If you don't believe me, report it to the authorities right now and have the Ministry of Justice investigate who started the fire. I'd bet my life that Gu Qinghe wouldn't dare report it. Minister Song of the Ministry of Justice is renowned for his impartiality and is a master at solving cases. No. Don't report it. Ladies, this fire certainly wasn't started by Yujin. Gu Qinghe hurriedly interjected, breaking into a violent coughing fit. The ladies exchanged glances, then looked at me with disdain. If you ladies don't believe me, then go ahead and report it to the authorities, I said calmly, taking a step toward the door. Don't worry, Yujin. No one will say you started the fire. Gu Qinghe swallowed the metallic taste in her throat and said in a hoarse voice, ladies, don't you agree? The ladies weren't fools. They had already noticed Gu Qinghe's stance. The minister's wife gave a reluctant nod, while the others remained silent, playing dead. If I hear a single person accuse me of arson, I'll report it to the authorities. Spreading rumors will get you arrested too. I shot the minister's wife a sidelong glance and pushed Gu Qinghe aside. Gu Qinghe lost her balance and was steadied by a maidservant. Yujin, apologize to your elder sister. Gu Yanqing strode over, his face dark with anger. Behind him, Qiu Ying followed at a distance, neither too close nor too far. Yanqing, I just lost my balance. Sight has nothing to do with Yujin. Gu Qinghe wiped the corner of her eye and forced a smile that looked worse than a cry. Yujin, where did you run off to just now? I've been looking for you for ages. Gu Yanqing suppressed his anger and demanded. He scrutinized me from head to toe but found nothing amiss. Strange. Could it be that Qiu Ying didn't drug me? I've been right nearby the whole time. Why didn't I see you looking for me? By the way, why are you with Qiu Ying? I narrowed my eyes at the guilty-looking Qiu Ying and said calmly, Qiu Ying said you were missing, so I went with her to look for you. Gu Yanqing answered without hesitation, showing not a trace of guilt. My expression darkened as I shot a cold glare at Qiuing. As a servant. When you discovered your mistress was missing, shouldn't you have gone to look for the Marquis's wife? Why did you go looking for Gu Yanqing, a stranger? And why were you walking around the Marquis's estate alone with him? Qiuing bit her lip and looked at Gu Yanqing with a look of grievance. Yujin, Qiuing was worried about you, which is why she lost her composure. Be magnanimous and don't blame her. Gu Yanqing spoke up immediately, afraid that Qiuing might suffer the slightest injustice. Miss. I was so flustered, and I happened to run into Master Gu. So I asked him to help look for you, Qiuing said tearfully, looking deeply aggrieved. Eugene, Qiuing is your servant. She has your best interests at heart. Why scold her? Gu Qinghe said with a forced smile. Walking over to my side. I've only been here for 15 minutes, and she's already gone. Anyone who didn't know better would think she'd run off with the stable boy. I remarked casually, without a care in the world. In my previous life, Qiuing often came to ask me for money. My heart ached for Gu Yanqing, who was called a penipincherby Lu Rian, so I gave her money every time. Thinking back now, I shouldn't have given it to them. I should have given it to a dog instead. Young lady, how dare you slander my good name? Qiu Ying's voice was shrill, and the look she gave me held a hint of resentment. Gu Yanqing's expression darkened instantly. Yujin, apologized to Qiuing. I shot Gu Yanqing a sidelong glance, gave a cold laugh, and walked on. In my previous life, after discovering that the Yong'an Marquis had given me a drug to prevent conception, I drugged him unconscious and burned him to death. Gu Qinghe's son and daughter looked down on me, schemed to seize my dowry, and even tried to poison me. I turned their scheme against them and poisoned them to death. I became the Yong'an Marquis' sole mistress. Later, I drank a bowl of lotus seed soup and was poisoned to death as well. I, Chu Yujin, have never been one to swallow my pride. Apologize to a mere servant. Young Master Gu, do you know what you're saying? I let out a cold laugh and shot a frosty glance at the smug Qiuing. She flinched in fear and hung her head in aggrieved silence. Qiuing is no ordinary servant. She has served you for 11 years. She is practically your younger sister. Gu Yanqing spoke solemnly, completely ignoring the strange glances from the other ladies. By your logic, Master Gu, your servant Dong Rong is your younger brother. As a master of the Gu household, does that mean he's entitled to a share of the Gu family's estate? As soon as my words fell, Dong Rong's eyes lit up, and he looked at Gu Yanqing with anticipation. You're shifting the subject. I'm talking about you and Qiuing right now. Don't change the topic. Gu Yanqing's face turned red with embarrassment as he retorted angrily. Qiuing is a slave who has signed a contract of indenture, while I am the eldest daughter of the Chu family. By comparing me to her, are you looking down on our Chu household? Young Master Gu, the Chu family has only you as a daughter. Don't you want a younger sister to keep you company? Gu Yanqing persisted, refusing to give up. My father is still young. He has plenty of opportunities to have more daughters. Mr.Gu. Please remember your place. We are merely betrothed. I said this in a firm voice and walked ahead. Gu Yanqing's face flushed with anger. He had intended to use this opportunity to force me to acknowledge Qiuing as my adopted sister. But it seemed that plan had failed. Qiuing bit her lip and followed me away, reluctant to leave. Back at the Chu residence, in my courtyard, thud. Qiuing knelt heavily and looked at me through her tears. Miss, it's all this servant's fault. It's enough that you know you're wrong. 30 slaps across the face. Xia Sang froze for a moment, thinking she'd misheard. I usually trusted Qiuing the most and had never punished her before. Smack, smack, smack. Madame Li immediately delivered 3 slaps to Qiuing, knocking her hairpin askew. I didn't spare Qiuing a second glance as I walked into the inner chamber, the Marquis of Yong'an's mansion. The room was filled with the smell of medicine and the sound of suppressed coughing. The Marquis of Yongnan sat in the seat of honor, his face cold and expressionless, saying nothing. Gu Qinghe glanced at Gu Yanqing, then hesitated, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't bring herself to do so. It must have been an accident. Chu Yujin wouldn't set a fire. Chun Tao swallowed hard, her lips pressed tightly together, too afraid to speak. Brother-in-law, what should we do now? Gu Yanqing asked, sounding somewhat guilty. How should I know what to do? Didn't that Qiuing slip the medicine to Chu Yujin? The Marquis of Yongnan looked at Gu Yanqing, his gaze scrutinizing. That medicine was something he had specially sought out. Its potency was formidable. In such a short time, it was simply impossible for me not to have shown even the slightest reaction. Your Excellency, judging by Chu Yujin's reaction tonight, she likely wasn't drugged. I have another plan that will ensure Chu Yujin has no choice but to marry Your Excellency. Speak up quickly, the Marquis of Yongnan said impatiently, failing to notice the grim expression on Gu Qinghe's face. Have Yanqing arrange a meeting with Chu Yujin tomorrow, saying you want to apologize to her. At that time, Yanqing will personally drug her. Then, Your Excellency can. Gu Qinghe paused for a moment but ultimately did not continue. Let's set the meeting at the Jiuwei Pavilion. It's crowded and full of onlookers. Chu Yujin won't be able to escape. The Marquis of Yongnan gave a cold laugh, stood up, and walked away. Cough, cough, cough. Gu Qinghe could no longer hold it in and began coughing violently. Eldest sister, Gu Yanqing called out anxiously, taking the tea Chun Tao handed him and offering it to Gu Qinghe. Gu Qinghe took a sip of tea to soothe her throat. Yanqing, how are things between you and Lu Rian? Eldest sister, Lu Rian is merely a concubine's daughter. She is unworthy of me. Gu Yanqing frowned in displeasure, folding his arms behind his back. I know, elder sister, that Lu Rian, as a concubine's daughter, is unworthy of you, but what we value is the Ministry of Rights behind her. Once you become the son-in-law of the Ministry of Rights, the minister will surely promote you. As for Chu Yujin, the Chu family behind her is a treasure trove for both you and the Marquis' household. Gu Qinghe closed her eyes. Her utter exhaustion was no longer concealable. I understand. I'll leave everything to you. Elder sister, Miss. Master Gu has asked you to meet him. He must be coming to apologize. Qiuing, her face still swollen, spoke ingratiatingly. I rolled my eyes and didn't respond. Miss, it's getting late. We can't keep Master Gu waiting. Qiuing, why did you betray me? What did Gu Yanqing promise you? Hearing me say this, Qiuing trembled all over in fear. Miss, this servant doesn't know what you're talking about. Since you don't want to say it, then you'll never say it. I raised my hand expressionlessly, and matronly, accompanied by two elderly maids, burst in. They pinned Qiuing down and forced a bowl of medicinal broth down her throat. Guh. Ah. After they released her, Qiuing frantically tried to gag herself, but it was already too late. Auntie Li, break her arms and legs, then toss her into the beggar's den. Ah. Qiuing shook her head violently, unable to utter a single word. Last night you drugged me. Today I've returned the favor with a bowl of silence potion. You're not at a loss. I narrowed my eyes at the terrified Qiuing as she shook her head frantically. I knew she was trying to wriggle out of it. She believed I hadn't taken any medicine last night, because she was in such a RRY to go cavort with Gu Yanqing. She hadn't actually seen me drink the drugged tea. A mere servant, conspiring with outsiders to harm her mistress. You truly deserve to die. I won't let you die easily. I want you to live in agony. Qiuing glared at me with hatred and lunged toward me. Thud. Xia Sang kicked Qiuing to the ground. Qiuing, have you forgotten that the young lady saved your life? Is this how you repay her? Before Qiuing could react, the matron dragged her away. Young lady, I'm sorry. Xia Sang hung her head, deeply distressed. I looked at Xia Sang, who had always been loyal to me in my past life, and smiled as I walked toward the exit. It was Chiao Ying who made the mistake. You don't need to apologize. This servant failed to notice in time that Chiao Ying had betrayed the young lady. I have failed in my duty. Then make amends today. My eyes twinkled as I whispered a few words into Xia Sang's ear. Xia Sang swallowed hard but nodded anyway. Jue Wei Lu. Gu Yanqing had been waiting and waiting, but I still hadn't arrived, so he was starting to get anxious. Young Master Gu. My mistress is waiting for you in room Ya. Xia Sang stood at the door and spoke in a low voice. Gu Yanqing looked at Xia Sang in confusion. Why are you here? Where's Chiao Ying? Chiao Ying is with my mistress, Xia Sang said without batting an eye. Then turned to leave. Go fetch Chiao Ying. I have something to tell her. Feeling uneasy, Gu Yanqing stepped forward to stop Xia Sang. Young Master Gu, my mistress is furious about last night's incident. Unless you offer a sincere apology, she will return to the manor. Xia Sang's face remained cold as she spoke in a hushed tone. Gu Yanqing clenched his fists, then finally relaxed. The more he thought about last night's events, the more suspicious they seemed. Why did that room suddenly catch fire? Chun Tao and the others were guarding the door. How did I manage to slip out? However, he didn't believe I already knew everything. Because he understood me. If I knew everything, I would certainly have caused a scene at the Marquis's mansion and wouldn't have spared anyone who tried to frame me. The most likely explanation was that I hadn't been drugged. Chun Tao and the others had been slacking off, and I'd slipped away right under their noses. As for the fire, it must have been caused by a rat or a night owl knocking over an oil lamp. The Marquis of Yongnan took a sip of tea and frowned slightly. Gu Yanqing had told him to wait in another room. Could it be that they'd been discovered? After finishing his cup of tea, the Marquis of Yongnan sensed something was amiss. Gu Yanqing smoothed his robe and prepared to knock on the door. Please come in, young Master Gu. I leaned against the door and spoke in a calm, measured tone. Gu Yanqing didn't think twice and pushed the door open to enter. The moment he stepped inside, he was swept into someone's arms. Brother-in-law. Let me go. Gu Yanqing turned pale with shock and struggled fiercely. But as a weak scholar, how could he possibly be a match for the martial-minded Yongnan Marquis? Everything I went through in my past life, Gu Yanqing deserves to taste as well. The only difference is that in my past life, the Yongnan Marquis was only pretending to be drunk and still retained some sense of reason. The current Yongnan Marquis, however, has been drugged by Chunxiang Lu's aphrodisiac and is acting like a stud. Before long, Gu Yanqing's agonized screams echoed from within the room. I sat in the adjacent room, sipping my tea leisurely, listening to the commotion next door. I took a deep, satisfied breath. Next, it was Gu Qinghe's turn to take the stage. Gu Qinghe, dragging her frail body, arrived with the minister's wife, Lu Ruyan, and Lady Zhang. They reached the room they had agreed upon beforehand, only to find it completely empty. Gu Qinghe frowned. What was going on? Lady Ho, the young master is in room Ya, Dong Rong said with a smile, patting his bulging money pouch. Gu Qinghe took his word for it and followed Dong Rong toward room Ya. A few people were gathered at the entrance to room Ya, their faces lit with lecherous grins. It worked. Gu Qinghe's heart leapt with joy as she wiped the cold sweat from her forehead with a handkerchief. What are you all doing here? Eugene and Yanqing are just having tea inside. Why are you blocking the entrance? Gu Qinghe asked, feigning confusion. Indecent sounds drifted out from the room, and the crowd chuckled lewdly. This, it can't be, though Eugene is Yanqing's fiancé. They haven't been married yet. They wouldn't do such lewd things. Besides, Eugene is the Chu family's only daughter. She's always been dignified and well-mannered. Oh my lady Marquis. Eugene clearly isn't the type to stay cooped up in the inner chambers. She must have seduced young Master Gu. The minister's wife interrupted Gu Qinghe, speaking loudly. The onlookers exchanged strange glances at them. Dongrong. Go kick the door open. Gu Qinghe coughed, her voice weak and feeble. Upon hearing this, Dongrong kicked the door open with a single blow. Gu Qinghe's lips curled slightly as she looked inside. Clothes were scattered on the floor, and the figure on the bed was still moving. Yujin, how could you do this? Stop it immediately. Gu Qinghe stepped into the room and walked toward the bed. Why are there only men's clothes here? Lu Rian asked in confusion. Gu Qinghe froze, only then realizing something was amiss. Chun Tao, close the door. Upon hearing this, Chun Tao quickly shut the door. No matter how dissatisfied the minister's wife and the others were, they couldn't just barge in. Yanqing. Gu Qinghe recognized the figure beneath the bed and cried out in shock. Gu Yanqing was weeping, biting his lip tightly. He dared not make a sound. Afraid others would find out, the Marquis of Yonlin was out of his mind. Venting his frustration blindly, Gu Qinghe picked up a basin of water and splashed it over the Marquis of Yonlin. The cold water splashing onto his face brought him back to his senses somewhat. How could this happen? Where is Chu Yujin? The Marquis of Yonlin wrapped himself tightly in the quilt and asked, his face dark with anger. Eldest sister, I'm defiled. Wah. Gu Yanqing curled up in the corner of the bed and sobbed. Gu Qinghe staggered, nearly fainting. This has absolutely got something to do with Chu Yujin. Rest assured, I will not let her off the hook. Your Excellency, come with me. Gu Qinghe took a deep breath, her expression frightening. The Marquis of Yonlin looked grim as he hastily pulled on his clothes. Squeak. Chun Tao opened the door. Gu Qinghe wiped away her tears as she stepped out of the room, the Marquis of Yonlin following behind her. Why is the Marquis of Yonlin here? Chu Yujin actually seduced the Marquis to fool around here, how shameless. The minister's wife shouted at the top of her lungs, a sneer of contempt on her face. I had no idea Yujin was trying to climb her way up to the Marquis. I have less than 2 months to live. And yet she's in such a hurry, Gu Qinghe said through her tears, giving the Marquis of Yonlin a meaningful glance. Madam, I am sorry. Strange as it may seem, after I drank a cup of tea, The Marquis of Yonlin sighed and did not continue. Chu Yujin actually drugged the Marquis. She is truly despicable, Madame Zhang said angrily. Never mind. What can we do? She is Yanqing's fiancé. For now, we'll just have to call off their engagement and have the Marquis take her as a concubine. Gu Qinghe coughed painfully, leaning against Chun Tao for support. Lady Marquis, you are so magnanimous. If it were me, I would never let her set foot in this house. Where is she? I must have a word with her. The minister's wife raised her voice, trying to rush into the room. Chun Tao immediately blocked her. Never mind. Let's not make things difficult for her. Gu Qinghe forced a smile and prepared to lead the group out. But as they turned, they spotted me standing behind the crowd. I stared at Gu Qinghe with a forced smile, saying nothing. Chu Yujin, what are you doing here? Weren't you in your room? Lu Rian asked in confusion. Gu Qinghe's face paled, and her fingers began to tremble. Exactly. When did you sneak out? You could have been the respectable wife of a third-place scholar. But instead you went and seduced a married woman. You're truly despicable, the minister's wife shouted, as if afraid others wouldn't hear her. I've been following right behind you ever since you showed up. You were too busy watching the commotion inside to notice me. Madam Minister, you have a vowel on the tip of your tongue every day. How vulgar. No wonder the minister has taken so many concubines. He's truly sick of you, I said with a cold laugh, giving Xia Sing a meaningful glance. Upon hearing this, the minister's wife clenched her eyes shut in fury. On the verge of fainting, Mother, Lu Rian cried out in concern. Though she made no move to support her, a maidservant hurried to steady the minister's wife. Chu Yujin, you shameless woman, you drugged the Marquis of Yonlanyo. Bang! The sound of the door slamming cut the minister's wife off. Miss, Young Master Gu is indeed inside, Xia Sang said with a smile, completely unconcerned about the shock her words might cause. I knew it. It's clearly two men at it. Yet they insist it's Miss Chu truly. Their motives are sinister. I think the Marquis's wife is deliberately smearing Miss Chu's name, all to cover for her husband and young Master Gu. Poor Miss Chu. To have fallen into the hands of the Gu family. Several onlookers shouted loudly, showing no regard for Gu Qinghe and her companions. Gu Qinghe staggered and fainted. My lady, the Marquis of Yilnan cried out in panic. Quickly catching the fainted Gu Qinghe in his arms and preparing to leave. Your Excellency, would you mind telling everyone exactly who you've been consorting with? I stepped in front of the Marquis of Yilnan and spoke calmly. The Marquis of Yilnan kicked out at me in a fit of rage. Get out of my way. I will get to the bottom of today's events and will not let the person who drugged me get away with it. I deftly dodged the kick. A faint smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Did he really think he still had a chance? Curious onlookers had already rushed into the room and dragged Gu Yanqing out. His neck was covered in marks, and he dared not lift his head. Young Master Gu, you've lost your mind. The minister's wife stamped her foot as she spoke, then dragged Lu Rian away. Madame Zhang, however, didn't leave. She stared at Gu Yanqing with gleeful curiosity. Get out. All of you. Get out. Gu Yanqing bellowed, the veins on his neck bulging. The crowd, having had their fill of the spectacle, scattered in a rush. Chu Yujin, you did this, didn't you? I'm your fiancé, would you try to ruin me? Gu Yanqing said through gritted teeth, looking as if he wanted to strangle me. Why? Have you forgotten that you had Qiuing drug me? No sooner had I spoken than Gu Yanqing stared at me in shock. How do you know that? No. Wait, why didn't you expose me last night? You fool. I sneered and hurled the engagement jade pendant at his face. The pendant struck his face and shattered on the ground. Gu Yanqing. I, Chu Yujin, despise you. I'm calling off the engagement. No. I won't agree to that. If you don't want to end up in prison, you'd better marry me obediently. Otherwise, I'll go straight to the Ministry of Justice and accuse you of drugging the Yilnan Marquis. Gu Yanqing narrowed his eyes and threatened in a low voice. Go ahead. I'll be waiting for you to dig your own grave. Don't forget. Qiuing is in my hands. I raised an eyebrow and turned to leave. Chu Yujin, how could you be so heartless? I, Gu Yanqing, misjudged you. Fine. If you want to call off the engagement, so be it. I'll see who would marry a woman whose engagement has been broken off. Gu Yanqing shouted viciously at my retreating back. I didn't look back, but walked forward with a smile. As the Chu family, imperial merchants of the highest rank, how could we lack our own connections? That day, Father sent over 3 antique artifacts and told me the matter was settled. The very next day, the old Marquis of Yilnan was exposed for embezzling disaster relief funds. The old Marquis of Yilnan had already passed away, and the Emperor's fury knew no bounds. Counselor Lu publicly accused the Marquis of Yilnan of moral depravity, claiming he had engaged in homosexual relations with his brother-in-law. Gu Yanqing, the Emperor, flew into a rage, demoting the Marquis of Yilnan to commoner status and ordering the confiscation of his estate. As for Gu Yanqing, his official rank was stripped, and he was barred from ever holding office again. The Marquis of Yilnan knelt outside the throne hall, begging the Emperor to spare him and the Marquis of Yilnan's estate. It was to no avail. When the imperial edict ordering the confiscation of the estate arrived at the Marquis of Yilnan's residence, Gu Qinghe had just finished a bowl of porridge. Pfft! Gu Qinghe spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted once more. Mother! Mother! The 2 children wailed, shaking the unconscious Gu Qinghe. Cui Yongzheng touched the letter and silver notes in his chest. Casting one last glance back at the capital, he would return. With a flick of his reins, the proud and handsome man galloped toward the future. Miss, why won't you see second young Master Cui? Xia Sang asked in confusion. It's better to see him than not. I believe he'll remember me. I smiled as I watched the man ride off into the distance. We would meet again in the not-too-distant future. Miss Gu Qinghe is kneeling at the gate with her 2 children. Begging you to see them, the gatekeeper said angrily. I thought Gu Yanqing would come first, but I didn't expect Gu Qinghe to arrive first. Gu Yanqing really knows how to hide behind a woman. Since they're here, I'll see them. I fastened the ruby earrings in front of the bronze mirror, then rose gracefully and made my way to the main gate. Gu Qinghe was dressed in white, her face alarmingly pale. She leaned against Chun Tao's embrace, looking as if she were on the verge of death. Eugene, you've finally agreed to see us. The moment she saw me, Gu Qinghe excitedly reached out her arms. The 2 children looked at me expectantly, showing none of the hatred they had in my previous life. What does Lady Cui wish to ask for? The Chu household has always provided relief to the poor. We certainly won't let Lady Cui leave empty-handed. Cough, cough, cough. Upon hearing my words, Gu Qinghe began coughing violently. We aren't here to beg. You're my uncle's fiancé. Now that our whole family has fallen on hard times, you must treat us like royalty. Gu Qinghe's daughter shouted at me, eyeing my clothes and accessories with envy. If you hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten. Auntie Li, please take back everything I gave to young Master Gu. After all, we've broken off the engagement, I said lazily, not surprised to see Gu Yanqing rush out from behind the crowd. Eldest sister, you're so ill, get up quickly. No, if Eugene doesn't agree to marry you, I'll kneel here until I die, Gu Qinghe said, coughing and spitting a mouthful of blood onto the ground. Mother. Mother. Eldest sister. I took a deep breath and sat down in the armchair Xia Sang had brought over. Madam Cui, have you forgotten? That day at the Jiwei Pavilion, you personally annulled my engagement to Gu Yanqing. Furthermore, the whole capital knows about the romantic affairs between young Master Gu and your husband. I certainly won't marry a man who loves men, I said with a forced smile, taking a sip of tea to moisten my throat. And that's all because you drugged my brother-in-law. Chu Eugene, you've ruined us. Aren't you afraid of karma? Gu Yanqing was so enraged that spit flew from his mouth as he screamed at me. Mr.Gu. Everything requires evidence. Otherwise, I'll sue you for defamation. I thought you were beggars, but it turns out you're here to insult me. Guards, drive them away. Don't let them soil the Chu family's grounds. I frowned in disgust and said in a deep voice. A dozen or so servants rushed over and immediately surrounded Gu Yanqing and his group. Eugene, have mercy on us. I'm dying. And my 2 children have no one to care for them. Please take them into the Chu mansion, even if we have to be slaves or maids, as long as we have a meal to eat. Gu Qinghe wept pitifully, her voice hoarse. The onlookers around her looked at her with sympathy. Gu Qinghe was cunning. Knowing I wouldn't agree to fulfill the marriage contract, she wanted to send her 2 children to the Chu estate. What? Are you trying to find an opportunity to drug me so I'll lose my virtue to Gu Yanqing? You can dream on. Madam Cui, are you saying your entire family is going to die out? Even if you all did die, those 2 children should be sent to the orphanage. Not to my Chu household. My sister and I coming to the Chu household is a sign of respect for you. Didn't drag your feet. I'm hungry. I want roast duck from Jiwei Lu, the 12-year-old boy said arrogantly, completely oblivious to the tension in the air. Well, I suppose that makes sense after all. I used to grant him every wish. Want roast duck? Go ask your father to buy it for you. Everyone. Let's call it a day. They're just trying to wipe out the Chu family. But I won't let them succeed. I waved my hand and said calmly. Gu Yanqing's face darkened. He truly hadn't expected me to say it so bluntly. Ugh. Gu Qinghe coughed up a mouthful of blood and fainted. Chu Eugene, you've driven my eldest sister into a faint. Are you trying to kill her? Gu Yanqing shouted, pointing at me. His eyes filled with such hatred he looked as if he wanted to strangle me. Madame Chui said herself she wouldn't live much longer. How is that me killing her? So that was your plan all along, to pin her death on me so you could blackmail the Chu family. Someone, go report this to the authorities. I said, my face cold. In my previous life, Gu Qinghe died 5 days later. They wouldn't get away with framing me. Yes. Miss. I didn't want to linger, so I turned and headed back to the mansion. Chu Yujin, you stop right there. Gu Yanqing howled, trying to rush over, but the servants blocked his path, and he couldn't take a single step. Soon, they were taken away by the officials. The emperor despised them. They were doomed. 3 days later, Gu Qinghe died in prison. Gu Yanqing brought the brother and sister back to the Gu mansion, only to find that the Gu estate had already changed hands. The Gu mansion was the residence I had given to Gu Yanqing, and I had already sold it. Chu Yujin is truly that vicious. Don't be afraid. Ruyan will take care of us. Gu Yanqing comforted the 2 crying children and led them toward the Minister of Rights residence. Pa, what a piece of trash. My 3rd young lady is already betrothed to the eldest son of Minister Li. Who do you think you are, claiming to be her fiancé? The old woman shouted at Gu Yanqing, chasing them away with a broom. Have you locked Ruyan up? Ruyan loves me deeply. She would never agree to marry anyone else. Gu Yanqing grabbed the broom and roared furiously. Ha ha ha. Lu Ruyan strolled over leisurely, a smile of contempt and disdain on her face. Young Master Gu, you'd better wake up. If you hadn't deceived me into believing I could live a life of luxury and privilege, how could I possibly have agreed to marry you? Lu Ruyan, I treated you with sincerity. Yet you're so shallow, choosing wealth over poverty and climbing the social ladder. I learned it from you. Don't think I don't know about how you and your elder sister conspired to frame Chu Yujin. Aunt Lu, hit her. Drive this villain out. Lu Ruyan's expression turned icy as she spoke without mercy. Lu Ruyan, I won't let you off the hook. Once I've dealt with Chu Yujin, I'll come back for you. Ignoring the pain from the blows raining down on her, Gu Yanqing glared at Lu Ruyan with venom. Lu Ruyan rolled her eyes and walked away, swaying her hips with disdain. Cui Yonlin lay on the bed, his beard unkempt. He still couldn't accept reality. The 2 children sat under the eaves, looking gloomy as they pondered what to do next. As for Gu Yanqing, he ran to the gate of the Chu mansion, shouting that he knew he was wrong and begging me to forgive him. He was willing to become a son-in-law of the Chu family. I didn't see him. A month later, while I was out shopping with Xia Sang, I saw Cui Yongwen and his son begging on the street. As for Gu Yanqing and his daughter, he had sold them to the Chuanxiang brothel. Miss. Gu Yanqing cut off Cui Yongwen's manhood. Xia Sang covered her mouth, unable to stifle her laughter. I wasn't surprised in the least. After all, I had instructed Dong Rong to keep whispering in Gu Yanqing's ear that it was all Cui Yongwen's fault that his thing had caused the trouble. Seeing the pitiful state of those 2 who I had pampered like royalty in my previous life makes me feel absolutely delighted. Miss. A letter has arrived from 2nd young Master Cui, Xia Sang said with a smile, handing me the letter. Looking at the words on the envelope, I felt that Cui Yongwen and his son should be on their way to the afterlife. The story has come to an end. Thank you all for sticking with me. See you in the next one.